Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. This is Tulio Siragusa broadcasting from Southern California. Today's Wednesday, June 9th, 2021. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico. Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Hey.
Pleasure to be here as ever, Tulio.
I missed you guys yesterday. So we're talking today with Megan Killian of CashFly and Barry Whitley of CashFly. We're going to be talking about an interesting topic of conversation and get to know them a little bit, get to know their company. Specifically, what we're going to be focusing on is understanding how to bring together audiences through emerging video technologies. A lot of that has happened in the past year because of the pandemic, but there's a lot of disparity, different systems, and maybe there's a way to bring it all together. I don't know. We're going to find out if that's possible today. Before we do that, let's get to know our guests. So Megan, Barry, please introduce yourself. Any one of you could go choose, and let's get to know you a little bit.
Sure. So I am Megan Killian. I'm the VP of Marketing at CashFly. I've been with the company for coming up on a year and a half now. And I got the unique opportunity of joining sort of as the digital migration really hit the runway with COVID and audiences kind of moving from in-person to being online. And I've gotten to really own our brand and marketing and align that technological development for that. And so it's been a really fun ride.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you come from? Where do you live?
Sure. So I am in sunny Maitland, Florida, which is just outside Orlando. I'm about 30 minutes from Disney and Universal and plus 45 minutes from the beach. So really great central location here. I have been in the CDN space for the last 6 years. Prior to that, I was still in B2B technology. I've pretty much always been in B2B tech for 10, 15 years. I have 4 kids, all sons, and they run the gambit from age 3 to age 14. So if you have questions about raising little boys, I gotcha. I love to golf, which is a new hobby, and love a good book.
Nice. You and my mother raising all boys, huh? I joke around, says she had 4 boys she was raising. My dad was the 4th. So Barry, let's get to know you a little bit.
Well, I'm completely the opposite to start, which is that even the cats are girls in my house. So it's me surrounded by women. So 2 teenage daughters, 2 female cats. The fish is probably female as well. So God getting back at me for being a guy. But so my name is Barry Whitley. I'm the director of solutions architecture for CashFly. Going on about 22 years of originally started just software engineering, kind of heads down. Working in a cave doing the coding portion, and then switched into a more customer facing and sales role about 12 years ago, and got into the CDN space. So pretty long track record of working with web applications, a lot of it specifically in video, although with CashFly we deal with a little bit of everything. So I've gotten an opportunity to see a little bit of almost all the tech out there and kind of the unique space that CDNs fall into, which is accelerating anything and everything that makes the internet better and more fun for basically every type of web application out there. So it's been a neat, fun ride from that standpoint. Timeline with working at CashFly is kind of basically the same as Megan. She brought me on board here. I'd actually known her, spent a lot of years living in Florida, but then one of the neat things about CashFly is we're a 100% remote technology company. Doesn't really matter. Heck, even in previous jobs, it didn't really matter where I was at. CashFly just kind of has taken that to the logical conclusion, which is live where you're happy, live with your family, live where you can get the best quality of life. And then we're all online doing the job and kind of navigating. Even pre-COVID, we were already kind of in that place where we're navigating a 100% online world. So I was able to move back to where I grew up, get everybody back around the grandparents in sunny, most of the time, Albuquerque, New Mexico. So
nice. And it's not getting back at you. It's a reward. I'm surrounded by all females too. So it's a reward, my friend.
Reward. There we go.
It's a gift.
It is,
all right,
for the most part.
Let's get to know CashFly. What's the company all about?
Smooth.
Hey, I'm a girl dad, so, Girl power. And actually, my pets are all females too. I just started thinking about that. Yeah, I'm in the same.
Yeah, no. Once it starts, it snowballs, right?
It is. It is what it is.
I got girl pets just to get me some.
You got to balance that.
I had to fight back against the testosterone.
Exactly. So, okay. So let's talk about CashFly. What's it all about? What do you guys do?
Sure. So CashFly has been in existence for 2 decades. Our CTO and founder, Matt, he actually invented TCP Anycast, which is the infrastructure upon which most CDNs run today. For most of our life, CashFly is not focused on sales or marketing. They've very much been an engineering-run organization, really focused on expanding the technology, building out things that work, giving the best quality of experience to our customers and their end users. It wasn't until a year and a half ago when Matt approached me that we really started focusing on the sales and marketing piece of the business, which is why I brought Barry on board and our sales team. So now we're really ramping up to build the business from a sales standpoint as well. We are a CDN, and basically that just means we get the bits and bytes from one place to another faster than the public internet. CashFly in particular, we are the #1 CDN for throughput, which means that time to that last byte is the best with us. So if you're serving digital downloads, video, anything like that, we are absolutely going to deliver it faster than anybody else.
Awesome. Now, if anybody is not familiar with what a CDN is, it's what makes the website load fast anywhere in the world. So it's also why on Tuesday morning a good number of big websites worldwide crashed. That was because of a CDN problem.
Sorry,
let's go right into the topic. Carlos, please introduce the show and let's see what we can learn today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tulio, and thanks, Megan and Barry. So today we're going to be the topic that our guests chose for today was uniting audiences through emerging video technology. So we're going to be answering the question, how can viewers stay engaged and connected across continents? So the first thing that I need to ask you, Megan, Barry, is this. Why did you choose this particular topic for today's conversation, or why did you feel it was relevant for today's day and age? Let's start with that.
So I'm going to start from like a business perspective, and then I'm going to hand it over to Barry to talk about it a little bit technologically. But for me, the whole reason I'm in tech, the reason that I love being in CDN is that I have a vision of a world where you're born doesn't matter. From everything from educational platforms to things like what we're doing today, I see a world where borders don't matter because we're all connected using technology and the digital realm. And so to that end, video is the highest connection, most haptic feedback we can get today. And so for me, it's really important that even in a post-COVID world, we've all been very focused on video during COVID. It's how we've kept our businesses running. But long after we're in a post-COVID world and things are getting back to normal, it's important to stay focused on these emerging technologies because they really do bring people together. I mean, look at just this lineup, right? We're all over the place, and yet we can have this conversation as if we were sitting together in a room. And that means that we're getting access to ideas that we didn't have access to before. I believe great minds, they come from everywhere, and I want to have access to people and their ideas, even if they live someplace completely different from where I am. And Barry can talk a little bit about kind of the technology that's evolving today that's allowing for that.
Yeah, so, I think everybody kind of understands, too, that in a world, COVID has accelerated this a lot, but we were already kind of moving in this direction anyway, which is a lot of people cutting the cable, but still wanting entertainment, connection, and interactivity, as well as kind of the personal and professional interactivity. We're looking for a way to get that information in a constantly time-shifted type of scenario. I think the first 2000 to 2015, 2016, streaming technology was all about just getting it to work, period. It was, can that little niche group of viewers that are going to consume my content, or that would rather consume, baseball online instead of watching it through their local cable network. It was just a matter of, can we make that work? I think there's been a lot of emerging technologies, though, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, that have really hit their stride. And now we're talking about how can we make this a true to-scale type of deployment, right? So how can we get 20 million people to all watch the same, American Idol final, and those types of questions. And how do we also make it then scale in a more interactive format? Once we've solved kind of the macro scale issue, then how can we move that down to the micro and also solve and have better solutions and more interactivity for things like what we're doing here, where we've got, 5 people in a room chatting.
So I've got a question. Talking about the macro or the micro, in your personal opinions, which one is going to be most pivotal, most important moving forward? The idea of getting information to the masses, or having the masses have equal access to the information?
I think honestly, there's going to be two very similar kind of parallel things that are both going to end up being equally important in their own way, right? Yeah. So the macro solution is, how do we get a Super Bowl where it's streamed 100% online and doesn't involve a traditional network, period, right? So those user numbers are something that 10 years ago the internet just couldn't handle. I mean, it was just physical impossibility. There's not enough transit, there's not enough ports in the world available to be able to do something like that. That is getting much closer to being solved. Like, how can we get these large scale events? And even in a medium type scenario, if you are a content owner that's, even looking for 10 or 20,000 viewers for an event, that can be a really big deal to your business. It used to be prohibitively expensive. There's now technologies, like we have a low latency streaming platform. We can also, like most, handle Apple's HLS. There's, MPEG Dash and a couple other solutions that are, again, built to be internet friendly, but can also then achieve scale and kind of solve any of those kind of macro audience type events that you're looking for. The micro stuff, though, I'm not sure that we figured out how important it's going to be yet, because I don't think everybody's been so focused on just getting video to work through something like HLS that I don't think we've really we're seeing just the tip of the iceberg right now in terms of what people's expectations for real time and interactivity are going to be going forward, right? So right now the niche is for much smaller audiences, and it's much more focused on, we're seeing a lot of, 1,000 to 10,000 viewer events, or then there's obviously the Zoom example, which is a lot of 1 to 25, type audiences. How that changes, I'm not even sure yet, because I don't think we figured it out. Like, I think as people get more used to having real time, having interactivity, having the video be kind of just a normal part of their workday, that we're going to see a gradual trend towards all sorts of applications being expected to have 20 to 50 users. I think Discord might be a good example of how that goes, or Slack. There's no reason. We're testing out another tool internally as part of our being 100% remote called Sidekick, which again is trying to bring, can we have video constantly running all day, every day, to make it feel like we're sitting in an office? Like, can I have one touch, push to talk, or just voice activated interactivity with the rest of my coworkers, and eventually maybe the rest of my clients too, right? So I think those are in kind of the infant stage, but COVID's kind of pushed that to the forefront, and I think it's just going to expand, and we're going to find a lot more of these kind of micro interactions and micro video audiences as well.
We're seeing too, as the migration goes the other way, right? Like, as in-person events are coming back, many of them are coming back as hybrid, and we're still kind of navigating that. But like at CacheFly, we're playing around with milliseconds instead of seconds in terms of live latency. But kind of one of the questions around that is, how do I make an event just as interactive for someone who's sitting at home 1,000 miles away as the people that are on the floor engaging and interacting? And if the latency isn't extremely low on that live video, then the interactivity just becomes really clunky and uncomfortable.
Right.
And we're still seeing that build out and the scale of it. Like, we haven't had a huge event yet in the hybrid space, but they're coming. Like NAB, IBC, MWC, they're all planning to do both. And so it'll be interesting to see how does that scale and at what interactivity level.
So interesting. I love this idea of the video walkie-talkie. So let's just quickly break it down a little bit, sort of like what's happened in 20 years, because it's amazing. So we used to be one-to-many, and you had the broadcasters using whether it was satellite or signal to basically broadcast on your TV box. Then it went one-to-many through the internet. Then we introduced the one-to-one capability, right? And now the one-to-many is not just the major broadcaster. It could be any one of us who is a one-to-many. So the next step is the video constant on, idea of a video constant on, where you can hop on to participate on the stream. A lot's happened in just a short 20 years. Most of that has evolved really in the past 5 years. So what role are you guys playing in facilitating all these advancements in the video world?
Right. So
did I miss any, by the way? Did I miss any?
No, not at all. No, so actually I think from a business sense, the one-to-many is still going to be where most of the monetization and most of the revenue. I think that's still always going to be the most heavy focus in terms of where our entertainment content is going to be going to. That being said, there's some interesting niche use cases in there that I'm not even sure. I don't know how they fit into the one-to-many or one-to-one thing. So one of the neat questions that we've been asked this last year is there's people that want to put broadcast soccer live or football, and soccer supporters like to chant and sing along. They've all got team songs. A big part of the user experience is being able to sing along. And so they've got a need to do low latency just so that they would like their fans to be able to pump the audio back and forth to each other and be able to sing along while watching. Now that's still a one-to-many broadcast, right? But it's got some interesting kind of two-way interaction, and it's got some need for real time. When it comes to how we facilitate that, what we're trying to do and what CacheFly specializes in is bringing scale and global reach to those types of problems. Zoom, as it's kind of, and Zoom-like products as they're kind of currently imagined and deployed, are very much kind of local to their region. You deploy a Zoom server, you've got to pick where that Zoom server is, and the scale there hits a wall fairly quickly, right? So you're talking 25, 50, maybe 100, audience members at one time for something that has true interactivity like that. We're looking at providing a scale that is able to take that low latency and that capability to do interactivity and provide that with a much more global reach, right? So put it on a network that's got 56 pops globally, that has its own backbone, that has the ability to take WebSocket protocols and things that you need for low latency and be able to replicate that globally very quickly, and then to bring those audience numbers up from 100 to 10,000, 100,000, a million, and just provide scale into that type of tech need.
Okay, I got a question, and I think that maybe Megan, as a vice president of marketing, might be the person to answer it, but I don't know. You guys let me know. My question is this. We're talking about uniting audiences through emerging video technology. When I think of uniting audiences, I think there are two paths the way I see it. And actually they're mentioned on the tagline. It's about staying engaged and staying connected. So the way I see it is like this. Staying connected could be, let's call it technically, could be something that can be worked out. Maybe you have a very nice engineering team, and you solve the problem of connecting at the technical level. But engagement to me is different. Engagement is about I don't know. It's about what you're saying, how you're saying it, what sort of visuals you're using, what is the context, what even things like, I don't know, maybe the graphic design, all these elements enter the equation, localization, all these things enter the equation. So what is the best way to mesh both aspects together in order to actually and effectively make it a global effort?
So there are a lot of different ways to come at this. Mm-hmm. But I talk a lot about technological collaboration and how we have to get past looking at each other as competitors in the space to work together to make the internet faster and better for everybody, right? And so what we're really talking about is a bunch of different software layers that have to live on top of CDN and on top of video streaming, right? So you have things like chat, like being able to push a button and see an emoji pop up. You know, even talking about like wide lenses and people being able to stand up and walk around while they're on Zoom so they don't get as much Zoom fatigue. We've had a lot of interesting conversations with customers looking for bespoke solutions around, you know, how do they sync multiple videos from a whole bunch of different places together and then send them out low latency. For example, if they were trying to put a musical group together, how do they harmonize when they're dealing with possibly having different internet speeds and different latency connections, and how do they get that all of that together? So of course, the content matters, the logistics matters, who you target matters. I know a lot of what's going around now is kind of like this webinar fatigue, that there's just so many of them, and my inbox is always full of 20 or 30 invites to webinars, and I'm like, guys, I don't have time for all of your content. So from a marketing perspective, getting the targeting right and making sure that what you're talking about is going to be relevant to them and something that they want to engage in, they have something to say about. From a technology perspective, things are more engaging when they are live. Like, the lower the latency between me and you, the less likely we are to do, you know, small things like talk over each other and do other things that can be perceived as rude, but really are just like technological delays. CashFly, like Barry mentioned, we have a global team. And so we have people with very, very different internet connections. Like the US, we have incredibly fast internet, but we have many people working for us who are in, you know, like India, South Africa, all throughout Europe, who might not have the internet connection that we do. And so one of the things we've had to deal with from a business standpoint is giving the right amount of time to someone to respond to what was just said to everybody, and how that's different from person to person. So one of the problems CashFly is trying to solve for is, what if we could get everyone to have consistent latency that's very, very low so that it feels instantaneous? And then we're overcoming all of those problems and making the content interactive by definition, because, you know, real life is interactive, right?
Appreciate it so much, Megan.
Talking about the difference in response time, it made me think of something that I've come across again and again, because I've read this book multiple times. But you, as a global team, not only is it technically difficult to manage, but culturally difficult to manage. So you mentioned, okay, us as Americans, for example, we tend to be pretty uncomfortable with silence, right? So even that natural delay after someone speaks, we feel like this need to like jump in, where other cultures are more comfortable with that, or they actually use that as a cue to, okay, now I can speak after this authority figure, whoever has spoken. So what other challenges, aside from we have to pause, not only technologically, but perhaps also culturally, have you come across anything working as a global team like that? And how are you as a company working through it?
Oh, yeah, of course. You know, globally, there are so many different cultures, and CashFly has people from pretty much every region in the world, and that means a lot of different cultures. I think what's really important as a business is to build your own culture. So if CashFly has a very defined culture, then everyone we hire, regardless of their background, they're gonna be a fit for the CashFly culture. Now, that doesn't mean we're erasing what their native culture or their heritage, but it does mean we have our own kind of model for how we deal with things. And a lot of it is as it comes. So even, you know, like simple things like what's how are we going to schedule things on each other's calendars, right? Like, what's the protocol for that? And everybody has different preferences. CashFly has used something called a communication builder a couple of times internally. And what that does is it really breaks out everybody's communication preferences and communication style. How do I like to receive information? How do I like to give information? And when you do that, and you do it on each team, and then you do it as a company, you see these kind of patterns that, all right, so our engineering team tends to all have pretty similar preference for how they like to be communicated with, whereas the sales team is very polar opposite. You're looking at extroverts versus introverts. You're looking at people who come from cultures where it's rude to interrupt. People who come from cultures where, you know, maybe women would defer to men. And that can be definitely hard to navigate. But if you create your own strong culture in your company, you overcome a lot of that naturally. And then case by case, just take everything as it comes. And really, really encourage people to be open and honest. One of our core values at CashFly is to be authentic. And so if people are being authentic and they're bringing to you this like, hey, you know, on the last 5 Zooms, I felt a little bit uncomfortable because of this thing that's happening, then you get to address it. You bring it out in the open. You sort of just break it down into components and say, all right, these are the different standards there are, but this is what's going to be the CashFly standard. And is that something everyone can accept and we can move forward?
Like a team agreements and very transparent. And like, is this documented? Do you have like, so the new team members can come in and have catch up, or what does that look like? And I apologize, I realized you were going to say something.
Good. Once we come to an agreement, then we document it. And then that's sort of, and it's changed just in the time that I've been here. You know, we had a communication policy when I came on board, and very, very quickly we found, hey, that communication policy was great when the company was just engineers, does not scale to having a sales and marketing team. And so then, you know, we made changes and we documented those. And so now when we bring somebody on, it's a little bit different. And it's always hard in the transitional period, but in the end, we get a much more cohesive organization.
And I'd expand a little bit too on the time zone and the time shift portion of that too. And actually it ties back into kind of the video discussion anyway, which is that you have to definitely come to terms and understand if you've got a global audience, or if you're attacking a global audience, or in our case, if you're a global company and need to make you know, allowances for the different time zones and just the nature of when and how your different employees or your different audiences work and consume. You definitely have to be cognizant of that going in and have a plan for how to attack that. One of CashFly's big things is just being flexible on work hours. They understand that me being in New Mexico, I'm the only person in the Mountain Time Zone currently. That usually fits in pretty well with most places, but doesn't always. So there's some days I'm, you know, up at 5 a.m. and there's some days I'm working until 10 p.m. But we're flexible about Barry doesn't have to be sitting in front of his camera from noon to 4 because he's already, you know, he's put in his hours, right? So find the work-life balance. And then when that ties into then just how we operate in general, or how we target audiences when it comes to video, it's kind of keeping the same thing in mind, right? Like, how do you make your live events accessible to everybody? How do you balance when you're scheduling them? All those types of things. And so, you know, just understand that time zones exist. We're now completely 110% global, actually, I think, in a lot of cases. So, you know, time shifting is important. Right. Yep. Time shifting is important. Time zones are important. And understanding, you know, how different cultures consume and work. It can be very, very important to targeting those audiences properly.
Cool. Thanks for sharing all that. We're coming up on time. We're actually up on time. But before we go, let's get some final words of wisdom in terms of navigating through what you just described and adopting a culture where, you know, that old saying, like, when what Romans do as Romans, right? So it's sort of this idea that you come to CashFly, you learn how to operate within the culture that CashFly has created. Any words of wisdom in terms of, some people might say, well, that's canceling other people's way of doing things. You want to be more open. Does that really work?
Well, you can't have policies that you don't enforce, right? If you have a policy and you don't enforce it, it's not a policy, it's a suggestion. And at the end of the day, we're a really small team, right? So there's 26 of us, 27 of us right now. And if we couldn't all agree on how we're going to work together, that doesn't bode well for scaling into a much larger organization. CashFly has no desire to like strip away people's individuality. We want to believe that the best idea wins and that it's going to get elevated to the top. And we do, as much as possible, want to get everyone to kind of like agree on how we're going to move forward. But at the end of the day, people choose where they want to work. You know, there are a lot of incredible things about working at CashFly in our culture, and there are things that are hard. And every company that you work at is going to have things that are great and things that are hard, and you sort of just have to pick your hard. You know, CashFly is very flexible. I mentioned that I have 4 kids. I get to spend a lot of time with them. I work the hours that work for me and that work for my company. We have very strict values, and you have to fit them. But we also have the type of company where, like, when you get sick, everybody notices and they might send a gift. And like, I broke my ankle very, very early on in my relationship with CashFly, and they sent me a beautiful gift basket and note and told me to take my time in my recovery. We have what is essentially an endless PTO policy. So it's like, there are perks and benefits, and there are struggles of working in this type of environment. And I'm here because this works for me. It might not work for everybody.
Yeah. Good words of wisdom, right? If you don't like the cold, don't move to Siberia. It's, you know, choose where you're going to be the same way you would choose where you're going to live. So,
and we're transparent about it from the beginning, right? We're like, this is our culture, and we want to attract people that fit it. And if you don't fit it, you still might be incredible talent. And honestly, like, I've had job interviews where somebody's come to apply for CashFly, and I've been like, you know what? You're so talented. You're going to go so far. CashFly is not the right place for you to grow, but I know somebody, you know, over at Google, and I think that you should go interview there. That's going to be a better cultural fit for you.
Well, it's been great to have you both as our guests. We're over time. It's always happens that way. Things go. Time flies. So no pun intended. Cash fly, time fly. So thanks for being with us. Tomorrow we are going to do a rebroadcast. We're not going to be live tomorrow. We're going to be rebroadcasting a goodie oldie. We don't know what it is yet, but it'll be announced. You'll see it on our social media streams. So tomorrow at 12 o'clock p.m., look forward to that. And then we'll be back Monday for our recap show at noon Pacific, where we're going to recap this week's shows. And what do we got coming up next week, Carlos?
We don't have the confirmations yet, but I'm sure they're going to be. I mean, I'm still pending, as you know, the topic, but and a couple of confirmations. So it's all going to be there on the website. Please, folks, stay tuned for upcoming shows right here. Most likely, it's going to be there up by tomorrow or Friday at the latest. So stay tuned, folks, for more great, awesome Dojo Live conversations right here.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thanks, everybody.